Welcome everybody to another episode of Real Leaders, Real Connection. The idea is to hear the story behind every person and really get to know some of the stuff that is meaningful to us and that changes who we are and how we show up in the world. Please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, to my YouTube channel, if you want to hear more of these interviews and more of these stories. And today we have Christophe with us. A dear old colleague, not old in age, old in years, long time since we've seen each other, a colleague and friend. And Christophe, I'm looking forward to hear the story that you have to share with us today.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Daphne. And well, it's actually a dual story, if I may. But so basically, yeah. After the first few years of my career, which I started working with refugees, actually, I ended up in Cambodia, where I worked for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. And essentially, the work I was involved in was initially really about disseminating information about human rights. It was all very innocent and easy. But all of a sudden, there was kind of a civil war. And actually, I got involved in very difficult human rights work. I was all about civil and political rights, and actually eventually it made me end up in really personal danger. I mean, I walked through minefields digging up dead bodies. I was shot at with a machine gun. We were arrested by child soldiers. I mean, really, I'm now describing one day that was like the worst day of my life. And so this was a whole period of time in which I was first involved in this really quite hardcore human rights work in Cambodia, and then after that also in the link between human rights and environmental advocacy in Myanmar, in Burma. And what I learned from that is 6 years where I was really involved in sort of, pursuing human rights, but also in exposing dictatorships and the wrongdoings and the links between human rights and conflict and environmental destruction. But what I learned from that is that you can't really achieve much when you're fighting against evil. So I really, 6 years of that had me completely burned out, actually. Wow. And it was really, really quite tough. And then I chose the opposite. So I ended up in Jakarta in Indonesia, where I started working. I wanted to do something very different. So I started working, I thought something very constructive. And I worked with the European Commission, operation. I was involved in all the rural development and public health work in East Timor. And then I faced them quite the opposite. So I ended up being a complete bureaucrat, so much so. And it was very much, and I don't know what the organization is now, but at that time, and with the personalities I was involved with in terms of management, it was extremely top down, very command and control, and even coercion, I would say. And I had a huge lot of responsibility, but I had zero authority and absolutely zero creative space. Wow. And I felt absolutely suffocated. And so from these two extreme stories, in a way,
so let's just focus on the story for a moment, because the first story, or the first side, as I understand it, is really seeing, as you said, trying to fight evil and seeing evil at play. Just explain to me the circumstances a little bit. L'chaim, as they say. Cheers.
Circumstances. Tell me more about what you want to.
You were literally walking through a minefield, digging up dead bodies, being attacked or arrested by a child soldier. Like, what was that? Tell us a little bit more. Like, take us into the scene. Like, what was that?
It's a little bit sensitive because I'm still in the country. And the same leader is still in charge. So I prefer not to go to the...
Right, so like this is evil and facing it head on. And then you went to the other side, which was working for an organization. I missed that a little bit. What was going on there, where you were facing that bureaucracy, command and control? Tell me more about that then.
So this was a very large worldwide organization. It's European based. It emanates from the European Union. It's the European Commission, which is very strongly involved in development cooperation around the world. So all sorts of things: education, public health, rural development,
but
and
then
so
you're
on.
trying to do good. So that's the other side. You're trying to do good and to improve
Exactly.
structures, and you're facing this bureaucracy, which is not very productive, if I understand correctly.
Well, I mean, they do a lot of good, and they invest a lot of money in many places. The thing is, I felt I had no space. I had no air to breathe. I was completely suffocated. I felt really asphyxiated, so to say. So much so to the point that I had a spontaneous lung collapse.
Wow.
Because when we don't listen to our body and to our feelings, at a certain point, our body is going to actually do what our mind hasn't been able to. Because also, this organization was in a way a golden cage. It was a superb job with all the perks, great salary, all the benefits, travel, and all of that. But I felt really stuck.
Okay,
And
so
like I said,
yeah, so hearing the organization wants to do good, but somehow the way that it was run was disempowering you to the point where you said you felt suffocated, and actually your body was responding in the same way by collapsing your lung, literally not being able to breathe.
Exactly right. And so I at that point I was flown out to Johannesburg. I mean, first I spent 4 days in the ICU in Lilongwe, Malawi, where I was living then.
Wow.
And anyway, long story short, my lung recollapsed, and so I eventually had to be flown out. But that was a great blessing by coincidence. Well, there is no coincidence, as we said before, but essentially I landed in Johannesburg, and I spent all this time in the clinic. I was healed, but I was not allowed to fly for like about 6 weeks. And of course I could have taken the bus back, but that would have been quite a long journey. And instead of that, I chose to stay, and I did a number of courses which in hindsight were absolutely transformational for me. So one of them was consciousness coaching with Mark Steinberg of Creative Consciousness International. And I must say, I had been interested in coaching for a very long time, but this really kind of rebooted me. And at the same time, it was a complete confluence of coincidences in a way. At the same time, an old friend of mine had connected me with his old friend, a person working for a consultancy in England that was specialized in leadership development, teamwork, culture change, a consultancy that I then got associated with. And actually, I represented them for 6 years in Malawi for the whole of Southern Africa. And so, and also I got involved with learning about facilitation, how to work with groups, because I did all these courses that I could find in Johannesburg in the time when I was there. I did 3 or 4 of them all at the same time. And so I came out a different person. Sorry?
Was this recent? Was this a long time ago? Before I met you? After I met you?
This was in October, November 2008. So it's a while ago, 11 years ago.
Okay.
And so this all happened then. And since then, I've been an independent consultant. So initially, for the first 6 years in association with Prime East, with this British company. And then since then, independently.
So you're saying that
and so after...
Sorry.
Carry on.
We're talking over each other, but the lead up of events led you to actually reevaluate. You took the time, you reevaluated your career, your work, and how you want to be in this world, and you changed into what you're doing today.
Yeah, and for me, it was really seeing how I had all these experiences working for my government, the Belgian government, the European Commission, international NGOs, UN agencies, and I had seen organizations with an amazing purpose, with a beautiful vision, with great values, but that were really poorly managed, where people, people were burnt out, people were not feeling well, there was not a clear culture of well-being. And I felt that there lay my calling in a way. I was thinking, what can I do to inspire engage, energize people in organizations so they reconnect with this purpose and vision and values, and work in a very different way, and are really engaged and have better management, a more facilitative, a more coaching type of management, whereby they really,
So Christophe, tell me, what from your story changed you, and how did it change you? How did you change? What did you learn?
Well, so for me, it's precisely, I think, what I've been saying. On the one hand, I learned that you can't beat evil by fighting it. On the other hand, I learned that I could not really make a lot of change happen when I was kind of caught, stuck in a very big bureaucracy with a very steep hierarchy that would not allow me to influence it. And so what I learned is I wanted to be an independent influencer, basically, a leader in my own right who would engage with different organizations. And I have worked with 70 organizations since. 10, 12 UN agencies, lots of international NGOs, donor agencies, local NGOs.
I think what's interesting for me is that you're saying you experience both sides, but you feel that you can't create change from inside an organization, that you almost have to be an independent force to really bring about change. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're all different. And I think this is what I was made to do. And I felt this also. I mean, in a sense that in my experience, I became very often the confidant of organizational leaders who had no other people to talk with.
Right.
And actually, I mean, they paid me for many things, for energizing their staff, for bringing their management team together, but also for my irreverence, in the sense that I would tell them the truth. I would not, like everybody else would do, tell them what they wanted to hear. No. I would tell them what I saw, and I would always go quite deep in an organization, in the sense that when I start being engaged with an organization, I will do a lot of in-depth interviews with a quite a broad sample of people.
So, Christophe, I can really relate to that independent influencer, certainly the space that I come from, being the irreverent truth teller. And I'm just wondering, what is your leadership message to people from everything that you've experienced, because you've had it across the board now? You know, what is your message to people out there listening, leaders, would-be leaders, inspiration? What's it? People who are aspiring to be leaders. What would your message to them be?
Well, I would say two things. One is purpose, and for me, the purpose I found was actually quite recent. In 2014, it all came together when the UN Assembly brought forth these Sustainable Development Goals, and I realized that what I'd been doing for all the previous years was actually assist organizations in becoming more effective at being able to contribute to achieving those Sustainable Development Goals. But the other thing is also and this is absolutely crucial, what's his name? Joseph Grenny said, and I really love this, what he says. He says 99% of all problems in all teams and all organizations are related to this. Either conversations that didn't happen or conversations that didn't happen well. And so what can you do as a leader to be a generator, to be a facilitator of generative conversations, of conversations that are not about who's right and who's wrong, that are not just about facts, that are not just about empathy, which is great, but that are really about how can you create a platform for creative thinking, whereby you bring together the collective intelligence of your team, of your organization, whereby people really feel free and safe and connected and trusting, so that they can share the best of their knowledge, the best of their experience, the best of their aspirations, so that together you can really create a much better way forward.
Awesome. So you're saying your two messages are: be driven by purpose, a stronger purpose, deeper purpose than purely profit alone.
Absolutely.
The second one is have those meaningful, generative conversations that are really going to create change, not kind of spin around talking or just listening or challenging command and tell. Actually, how do you bring about a conversation that actually brings about change in the world and kind of something that's really going to be a positive impact.
And the spin-off of this is also that you give all people who participate in that a sense of mission themselves, a sense of responsibility, a sense of ownership, a sense of engagement, a sense of commitment. So that's the third one.
Because when you're involved in that kind of conversation, everybody feels like they're part of it, rather than that they're being told or manipulated or not really listened to. And I think that's a big part of it. Lovely.
Exactly.
Lovely. Thank you, Christophe. So where in the world are you at the moment? And I always do ask, what do you love about being in the part of the world?
So I'm now in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And I must say, I really love it here. I've been here for 1.5 years. It's a very vibrant city. And what I really like about it is sort of a little Paris in Southeast Asia, in the sense that everywhere there's bars and cafes and terraces. There's live music everywhere. Every night you can go to 3 different little concerts, and I just love it. Wow. And I play in some bars and cafes myself, so always bring my guitar.
I can't wait for you to come visit us again and play your guitar, and we'll have some beautiful singing.
And you're always welcome in Phnom Penh.
Thank you. Wonderful to see you, Christophe, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Daphne.